Hi everyone, it's Lisa from the blog Farmhouse on Boone, and today I want to share with you my 5 tips for healthy meals every night without meal planning. So in today's world of Pinterest and social media, I think we have a very warped view of what is expected of us as far as food and meals and everything like that goes. I want to preface this video by saying that I am not against meal planning. I think it is a great strategy for a lot of very organized type A people who have schedules and lists, and that's how they thrive, and that is wonderful. But this is for those people who feel overwhelmed by the concept of meal planning and schedules and homemaking binders and lists. So I am one of those people. I am not a planner, and I tried to fit myself in the box of meal planning mom for a few years after I was married, and I found that it just stressed me out and overwhelmed me, and that it was an extra step once I got into my groove of cooking for my family without meal planning. I found that for me, it just added to the stress rather than taking it away. I did not feel more prepared. I felt more stressed. And so for those of you who are like me and who also have that same kind of personality, who maybe planning isn't what works best for you. Back in the day when my grandma was a young mom, she wasn't planning a coconut curry cream cheese pasta bake. She was just making meat and potatoes and vegetables, and maybe threw in some cornbread or some herbs if they were in season. And so I thought of the 5 tips that have helped me these past few years to feel very on top of things and like we have a plan every night for food without having a plan at all. Most days I have no clue whatsoever what I'm gonna make for lunch or dinner, and my husband actually comes home every day at noon for lunch, and so we have a full-on meal at noon and at night. And I used to lay in bed at night thinking about what I was gonna make, and it stressed me out so much. Well, now I just adhere to these 5 principles. I don't meal plan, and we do eat a home-cooked meal at all those without me ever having to draw up a plan or get out a special chalkboard or notebook. And I know I've met some resistance on this post because I've had this post on my blog for a long time, and people who are planners think that this is absolutely crazy and reckless, and let me tell you, there are just different types of people in the world. It's totally okay. And so if you are one of those people and you think I'm crazy and reckless and that there's no possible way you could ever have a schedule of good healthy meals without planning, just go ahead and turn off the video and stick with your usual plan, because that is wonderful and I'm so glad it's working. Tip number 1 is always have a 9x13 glass dish in your fridge with meat thawing. Obviously, unless you're a vegetarian, the basis for a good healthy meal is usually some kind of protein that is meat in my family. The biggest obstacle you will run into whenever you are trying to make a meal from scratch, and if you haven't planned, is not having meat thawed out. So you open the fridge, all you have is a frozen chicken, frozen ground beef. Always have a pan of meat thawing in the refrigerator. So I will have a whole chicken, 2 pounds of ground beef, and a roast all sitting in the pan in the fridge. And I know that within that week or 5 days, all of that will get cooked and put to good use in a meal, and my meat is covered for the week. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I do know that it's thawed out and ready to go. Is throwing in a whole chicken and 5 sweet potatoes any harder than throwing in a frozen pizza? It's really not. You'll find that if you have the meat already thawed out and you have those staples in the fridge, but just being able to throw in a thawed out chicken and some sweet potatoes, maybe even put a little broccoli on the stove, and that meal became no harder than throwing in a frozen pizza. Tip number 2 is doing a little prep work whenever you have extra time. So if I go to the store and it is the middle of summer and I'm at the farmer's market or I'm at the local produce stand and they have bell peppers for a big bag for $3 or something, I will always grab those peppers. And then if I have extra time, I will slice them all up and put them in a bag, put them in the freezer, And then anytime that I'm just trying to whip up something really, really quick, like let's say I have some steak thawing in the fridge, I can slice it up, throw it in with the peppers, throw it in with some sliced onions, and we have a Mexican meal. So by doing things whenever you have an extra minute, you will set yourself up for being able to throw together a meal in no time, whether you plan to have it or not. I like to ferment foods, and so if I have extra time to prep a bunch of cabbage into sauerkraut, I will do 4 gallons at a time. And then every single time for the next year that I want sauerkraut, we have it there in the refrigerator ready to go. So that way you always have kind of things that are ready very quickly. Sauerkraut is an instant side dish that I have to think nothing about. I just have to get it out of the refrigerator. Another example of doing extra whenever you have the time would be if the oven is on and you're making, say, meatloaf, for example, throw in 2 bags of sweet potatoes. Now this, of course, is coming from a person with 4, almost 5 kids. And so I will throw in 15 sweet potatoes. When they come out of the oven, I will just set them out to the side until they're cool, maybe a few hours later. And I will put them all in a glass bowl with some butter and salt, put them in the refrigerator. And then for days, we have a side of sweet potatoes all ready to go. And so I don't really have to think about that at all, but I know that if I get home in a pinch, we have 2 sides ready. We have sauerkraut, sweet potatoes, and then we almost always have avocados in the fridge. So then that's 3 sides. Also, if you have an extra minute, throw a dozen eggs into some boiling water and hard boil them. And then you'll have those in the fridge. So if you come home from a busy day and you have literally no time to make anything, you could always peel those eggs, toss it with some mayonnaise or something like that and make an egg salad. Or you could have what we call in our house a continental dinner, which we just came up with that because it's like hotels have continental breakfast. But that basically means that we get out hard-boiled eggs, cheese, chips, sauerkraut, and call that a meal. There's always options if you have done a little bit of prep work and have the meat thawed. So the third tip is to keep quick cooking staples on hand. So my example for this would be keeping a couple cans of salmon in your pantry. So if we come home and let's say, heaven forbid, I forgot to thaw out the meat in the pan and we have no time and I didn't have any hard-boiled eggs, if all those things fall through, then I still have cans of salmon. I can make up some crispy salmon burgers, which are really delicious. I'll link the recipe below. I have it on my blog. And we'll have a side of sauerkraut, avocado, and maybe there'll be sweet potatoes in the fridge, maybe not. But either way, in about 15-20 minutes, I can have a full meal on the table with little to no forethought. Also, another example of this is eggs. So if I forgot to thaw the meat, I have no eggs hard-boiled, I don't have the salmon in the pantry, but if I have a dozen eggs, then we have the basis for a meal right there. So we can have scrambled eggs with a side of sauerkraut and avocado and call that a meal. So I talked about this a little already, but the fourth tip is to keep quick sides on hand. And sauerkraut was one of my examples and avocado is another. If avocados are on sale for 39 cents, which occasionally happens, I will buy 30 of them and put them in the refrigerator. They have to be the ones that aren't that ripe already. They need to be pretty green. I'll put 30 avocados in the refrigerator. I'll get out 2 at a time and put them on the counter so that we always have a few that are ripe. And that is the fastest side. It requires no cooking. It just requires chopping it up, adding a little bit of salt, and it's a side dish for literally everything. Some other super simple sides that are always ready really, really quickly when you need them is mashed cauliflower. So as long as you always have a couple of cauliflower in your fridge, steamed carrots. So every time I go to the store, I make sure to grab several bags of carrots. They're always in the fridge. So if I come home and we have no time, I need a very quick side, I can chop them up, put them in some boiling water and add some butter and salt and then we're good to go. Crispy potatoes, which if you always keep potatoes on hand, you can just chop them up real small and heat up the coconut oil and get them fried up in probably 15-20 minutes. So that tip is just to keep the fridge stocked with the simple sides. Never let your fridge run out of carrots, onions, potatoes, cauliflower. and you always have a side on hand. Another example would be frozen veggies. So if you have a freezer full of frozen broccoli, you are never more than 10 minutes away from a quick side. Fifth tip is to stock your staples. So always keep the things I mentioned before on hand. So let them be on your regular grocery shopping list. Frozen fruit is always on my list. So no matter what, when I go to the store, I'm always buying frozen fruit, great for smoothies. And then I also make sure to always have popcorn. We just buy it in bulk in the bags. Nuts, dates, raisins, quinoa, that kind of thing. Those are always up in the pantry. With those 5 tips, keeping your meat thawed in the fridge, prepping extra when you have the time, keeping the quick cooking staples on hand, keeping the fridge stocked with easy sides, and stocking your staples, you are never more than 30 minutes away from a meal, whether you prepped or not. Get creative with everything. Add the herbs, add a lot of salt and pepper, stock up on whatever's in season. So if rosemary's in season, buy a lot of rosemary and add rosemary to everything. If butternut squash is in season, make sure to have 20 of those on hand. Cook one up every time your oven's on, and then you always have that for a side. Buy a bunch of lemon and limes if you see them on sale and squirt them on everything. You don't need a recipe to do that. Get creative, experiment with it. Cook meat and vegetables and add flavoring and call it a day. To me, I don't need anything more than that. I don't have a lot of extra time to spend in the kitchen. I don't feel that I have to have good healthy meals on hand. I don't mess with recipes. They're fun sometimes and I like doing them on a weekend or something like that. But for the most part, you'll find me just cooking up meat, veggies, potatoes, calling it a day. I know it's healthy. I don't have to worry about it. As long as I have those things on hand, we are never more than 30 minutes away from a good healthy meal at all times. So some examples, because people have asked me, so what do you actually make for dinner? I'll just share a list of some of the things that I make on a regular basis. Roasted chicken with steamed carrots, sliced avocados, and sauerkraut. Grass-fed beef steak sliced thinly and sauteed in butter, served with sauteed onions, peppers, sauerkraut, and avocado. Salmon burgers with smashed cauliflower, steamed carrots, and avocado. Or leftover chicken in homemade bone broth with carrots and celery, so a soup that way. Meatloaf with mashed butternut squash, sauerkraut, and sauteed mushrooms. For breakfast, 6 days out of 7, it's eggs and smoothies. I might throw in some vegetables. If it's summer, I'm probably throwing in kale and spinach from the farmer's market. If it's winter, maybe onions, maybe nothing at all. And then just a milk kefir smoothie with frozen strawberries and frozen bananas. Might get fancy and make the kids sourdough pancakes on a special occasion. Might throw in some toasted coconut and blueberries. But you know, adding in these fresh ingredients doesn't take a recipe and you can just experiment with it. You don't have to have a recipe to make garlic herb butter chicken. You know, you can just take some butter and throw in some herbs and some lemon juice if you had picked that up. I will link all of these tutorials that I just mentioned in the description box below. So how to make toasted coconut, how to make sauerkraut, how to make milk kefir, and how to work with a homemade sourdough starter. All of these things just become second nature once you get them incorporated into your daily routine, and they're always ready for a simple meal idea. The key is just to buy a lot of fresh ingredients and make a variety of the same concept, which is always meat, vegetables, potatoes, or not even potatoes, just more vegetables too. There's so many options there and there doesn't need to be a plan to bring that together. So I encourage you to please stop on my blog and read the post, 5 tips for healthy meals every night without meal planning, because I give a lot more tips and it's a more thought out article. So I have a lot more tips and tricks and strategies that we use here in our kitchen. I will link that post in the description below so that you can go and check it out. Let me know in the comments below what you do. What is your strategy? Are you a planner? I'm guessing if you made it this far in the video, you're probably a little bit more like me and you kind of wing it at all times, but find that winging it actually works for you and that is okay. I love hearing more tips for how you're able to stay on top of healthy meals without having to plan it out completely. And also, if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do lots of videos on food from scratch, natural living in our handmade home here in the farmhouse. Thank you so much for stopping by.